We've reached the midway point of the 2024 NBA season, which means the All-Star Game is right around the corner. All over YouTube, I am sure you are seeing people give out their All-Star ballot or their predictions for who will actually make the team, and today I am going to throw my hat into that ring. Before we dive into my rosters, please leave a like down below as it helps me out far more than I think you guys realize, and subscribe if you want to see more basketball-related content. Now, let us dive in with the rules. A little disclaimer about my All-Star rosters: I do not follow the NBA's actual rules with regards to positions. What I mean when I say this is, I know it is controversial, but I believe in a thing called centers. I don't know about you, but I think they do in fact exist, and as a result, I include spots for centers on my roster. I know they may not be the most prolific scorers, or sometimes even all that fun to watch, especially on the offensive end, but to me, I love defense, I love good screens, I love rebounding, and I love winning basketball. Maybe you disagree, but this is my list, so I expect to see 4 guards, 4 forwards, 2 centers, and 2 wildcards on each roster. Beginning in the East, for my starters at the guard spots, I am going with Tyrese Halliburton and Tyrese Maxey. These 2 young rising stars have been both playing special basketball in 2024, truly breaking through the barrier, going from having great potential to being true all-stars. Halliburton currently leads the NBA in assists per game and is scoring the ball really well. He's also shooting lights out from downtown and leads one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Maxey is more of a score-first guard, but is also doing a spectacular job leading one of the league's best all-around teams night in and night out. They both deserve to be starters in the East. At the 2 forward spots, I'm going with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jason Tatum. No surprise there, I'm sure. Giannis is still doing Giannis-esque things. His stats are right around his MVP levels, and his team remains a top dog out East. You cannot overlook a potential MVP when picking the All-Star first 5. Tatum, meanwhile, leads the best team in all of basketball in scoring, while also doing a little bit of everything else on both ends of the floor. He broke into superstardom a while ago, and he has been doing very well ever since. For my Eastern Conference starting center, there is no correct answer other than Joel Embiid. Say what you will about him flopping and foul baiting, it's true, but I'm not going to hold that against him. Embiid probably is the most unstoppable force in the entire league in the half-court set. As of me typing this, he is averaging an otherworldly 35 points per game. If you do what most YouTubers and mainstream media like to do and pretend Wilt Chamberlain does not exist, that would make him the 5th highest scoring per game season in NBA history. He is easily the conference's best player and just may win league MVP if he can stay on the court enough this year. For my 2 backup guards, I'm going with Trae Young and Jalen Brunson. Trae is getting a lot of hate lately for the team's lack of winning. I just made a video talking about it and going over some trade ideas for Atlanta. But the guy is managing absurd scoring numbers, solid shooting efficiencies, and averaging 10 assists per game. The Hawks may not be high in the standings, but Trae is still without a doubt an all-star. Brunson, meanwhile, is still doing a terrific job leading a lackluster New York team. His dominant performances night in and night out are what is keeping New York above the play-in. Despite these 2 being undersized, they make up for it with their incredibly tight ball handling, playmaking, and shooting. For my 2 backup forwards, I'm going with Scottie Barnes and Kristaps Porzingis. Barnes has officially become the face of the Toronto Raptors franchise, and a lot of people are excited about it. His game is elevated on both ends of the floor, and he is also now nailing his 3-point shots. The team may stink, but Barnes has been doing great on both ends of the floor. Porzingis, meanwhile, is finally making his long-awaited return to the All-Star event after missing out each of the past 6 years. Porzingis is an elite scorer inside and out and has picked up his rim protection abilities to an elite level. He should have made the All-Star team last year, but the Wizards were terrible. Thankfully, playing on the league's best team, there is no way he misses this year. For my backup center out East, I'm going with Bam Adebayo. This may be the least competitive spot on either roster, as unfortunately there really isn't a second center in the East that even comes close to competing with Bam. He has elevated his scoring, his rebounding, and he's also shooting pretty well this year as the Heat are several games over 500. He gets to make the All-Star team. And for my 2 final spots, the wild cards, I am opting to choose Donovan Mitchell and Jaylen Brown. Mitchell has not been talked about much this season, as Cleveland opened up the year quite slow, but they have been heating up as of late, and he is leading the way, scoring the ball like crazy, passing better than ever, and he's also playing the best defense of his career. And for Brown, it really came down to the wire with him to squeeze him onto the roster. Brown is the Scottie Pippen to Jason Tatum, a spectacular player all around, but the third best on his own team. Boston being as dominant as they are and Brown being as dependable as he is what gives him the edge and gets him onto this year's All-Star game. As for the best to miss out, I think it is pretty obvious that both Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero are going to be brought up. Both of these guys are having terrific years for Miami, but honestly, the one thing holding them back is their team's success, and they've also played double-digit fewer games than Jaylen Brown. I think his injury replacements are probably number 1 and 2, but they don't make it onto the actual roster. Another name you may want to try to argue is Damian Lillard, but even with his impressive scoring, I feel as though his defense is terrible, and there are more deserving guys ahead of him who get it done on both ends of the floor. Derek White is also a very popular name being pushed on social media right now, but if he were doing what he is doing on a lesser team, nobody would be talking about him as an all-star. And maybe you want to try to argue Cade Cunningham, who's having a great year, but you cannot overlook how terrible their team is. Okay, time for the Western Conference, which is, as tradition, the by far more competitive of the two. There are guys who would not make this roster who would be on the Eastern Conference roster. That is how stacked this side of the country is. So let's get started with the first heavily contentious spot. My two guards out west are Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Luka may be an easy one to accept. Luka Magic is doing things that you flat out do not see anywhere else in the league. His ability to create space and score over anybody regardless of athleticism or size is something to marvel at. He is orchestrating a very competitive Dallas offense and has picked up his defense a noteworthy amount this year as well. Shai may be argued a bit online, but the Thunder are spectacular, and he is leading their team in multiple categories, scoring the ball extremely well. I just cannot imagine leaving him off the first 5. For my two starting forward spots, it may be a bit boring, but I'm going with LeBron James and Kevin Durant. A couple of old heads who have been defying father time as they continue to dominate the league. LeBron's Lakers have not been very good, but his play has been exceptional this year. He is the oldest player in the league at 39, yet he still flirts with putting up triple-doubles on a nightly basis. KD, meanwhile, is the best shooter in the NBA. He's putting up 28 a game, shooting 54% on his twos, 46% on his threes, and 88% from the foul line. Those are video game numbers. These two guys are obviously going to be in the All-Star game, and I think they belong to be starters. As for the Western Conference starting center, I don't think there's going to be any arguing, it's Nikola Jokic. The triple-double king is still getting it done. He does not chase the fame that most of the league's best strive for, but he's stinking really, really good. And he's also vying to be an MVP once again. Moving on to my two backup guards, I'm going with Stephen Curry and Devin Booker. Golden State may be falling apart, but Curry sure is not. He is still playing like his old MVP self, draining impossible long balls and orchestrating a high-scoring offense, or at least they would be a high-scoring offense if his teammates could relearn how to shoot. Booker is a very heavily criticized and often overlooked superstar in the league. Last year, he didn't even make the All-Star team. This year, playing more so as the starting point guard, his shooting is actually elevated, even with him doing more of the shot creation duties for others. Booker deserves to make the All-Star team this year. I'm sorry to all the Suns haters out there, which there are a lot of, but he's good enough. As for my two backup forwards, I'm going with Anthony Edwards and Lauri Markkanen. Edwards has officially arrived in the NBA. His Minnesota team ranks atop the brutal Western Conference, and he has been having special night after special night leading them. Both his stat totals and accuracies have reached a new level this season, and honestly, he almost made this first 5, but I don't think LeBron and KD are getting passed up by Edwards. Markkanen, meanwhile, may not have the hype to his name that Edwards does, but the finisher is having an even better season this year than last, proving that it was not just a fluke. On top of this, Utah has been on a roll lately, passing up several all-in contenders along the way. For my backup center, I'm going with Domantas Sabonis. Easily, he is one of the least talked about centers in the league, but oh my gosh, he's good. He's a top 4 center in the league. He's putting up 20 points, 12 boards, 8 assists a game, which is Nikola Jokic-esque numbers, but he manages to do it while shooting even higher efficiencies. Sacramento is one of the best teams in the West, and Sabonis, whether you want to admit it or not, is their best player. And now for my 2 wild cards. There are a lot of very talented names remaining, but only 2 spots are available. So no matter who I say, I think I'm going to make people pretty upset. So let's just dive right into it. I am going with Rudy Gobert and De'Aaron Fox. Gobert gets a lot of criticism online by people who do not actually watch games, but he has the league's best defensive rating for a very good reason. Nobody both protects the paint and moves out to the arc as well as him. You can argue all you want down below about who I am choosing to put on or leave off my roster, but I'm not going to budge when it comes to Gobert. The league's likely defensive player of the year does deserve to be an all-star. And De'Aaron Fox just simply cannot miss the all-star game after doing what he has been doing all year long. His scoring is top 10 in the league while shooting at an elite rate, throwing very good perimeter defense. It pains me to leave certain guys out, but I'm not leaving Fox out. And for my Western Conference snubs, this list is pretty long and tough to stomach, but that's just how it goes. Basketball's getting better and better, and there's not enough candy to go around. I'm going to try to keep this quick. Karl-Anthony Towns is putting up 21 a night on a 54-43 shooting split for the conference's best team. Alperen Şengün is up next for the league's best do-it-all center. Anthony Davis is having a great season and has been healthier than ever. Kawhi Leonard has been extremely efficient and productive. His teammate Paul George has also been great, though not as good as Kawhi. And their other teammate James Harden has also been great, though not as good as George. Jalen Williams has taken his game to the next level and emerged as the Thunder's second best player. Desmond Bane is also putting up terrific numbers on elite shooting efficiencies. Zion Williamson has been healthy and productive. And the rookies Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren are fun to talk about, and they are having legendary rookie years, but at this point, I don't think you can even try to argue that they're all-stars out west. And I could keep going, but I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys for watching my very controversial video, I am sure. I appreciate you sticking it through to the end. Please let me know who you have making the all-star team and who you think the biggest snubs will be. Please comment, like, and subscribe. I will see you all next time.